Hello, everyone. Happy New Year to all of you, and hope that all of you are ready to come back from a restful holiday weekend, ready to take the world by storm in your private practice. My name is Lisa with Woz Marketing, and I am fortunate enough to be joined today by Steve McCready. Steve, after nearly 15 years in the field of psychotherapy, now helps aspiring small business owners develop clarity, courage, and the confidence that they need to build innovative, value-driven businesses. Welcome, Steve.
Hey Lisa, how are you?
Great. So thankful that you're here with us today.
Hey, glad to be here and share a little bit about my experience and help some of your folks out.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we are thrilled to have you. And you have so much great content to offer people today that if it's okay with you, I am just going to dispense with the amenities and just dive right in.
Go for it. Let's do it.
Okay. So, Steve, I want to ask you, you had a career as a really successful therapist in psychotherapy, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how your career path transitioned you into being a coach.
Sure. And so it's kind of a roundabout way, I guess you could say, almost of coming home. Therapy was actually my second, I'll say, real career. Before that, I actually worked in technology for several years. And technology has been kind of a thread that's run almost really through my whole life. I mean, the first introduction I ever had to a computer, my mom worked for Apple back in the 70s when I was a kid. So my first introduction was when she brought an Apple II home on the weekend. And it was like, whoa, what is this amazing thing? It was like, it's a computer. Wow. And it had a monitor that was probably about this big with a green screen. Anyway, so I ended up partway through my 20s getting into technology as a career, worked there for several years, got into therapy after that. And so then with my time in therapy, as I continued to do that work, some of the frustrations about working in that particular box and realization that it wasn't quite fitting for me, and being able to do some of the things I wanted to do and help people in some of the ways I wanted to. I really wanted it. It felt a little limiting to me, I guess. And so in some of the work I was doing and connecting with entrepreneurs and other business people, I started to encounter coaches and started to hear kind of some of their stories about what they were doing. And especially the ones who worked with business, at first I was like, business, right? And then as I kind of thought about it more and looked at what some of these people were doing and how some of these folks were helping, I went, well, that's kind of cool. And as I looked at that more and got into the idea of a target market and really understood why it's so important, something I resisted for years, and really got into it and went, okay, what do I pick? What do I pick? Realized that I have this thread of technology through my life. I kind of, I'm still a gadget guy. There's my iPhone 7, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so as I looked at this and went, that kind of makes sense as a target market for me, because it's a place I still have, some connections to and anything that's interesting to me. And so that's where that piece of it came from, right? And then the coaching part, like I said, is really just about helping people to be able to really do what they're meant to do in the world, and to do it in a way that's a little bit bigger and broader than what I've been doing in therapy. So that's kind of the path there.
That's so important, for anyone and everyone to, at some point in their life, get to doing the work that they were meant to do, the thing that makes their heart sing, So that said, you talk a lot about IT and that being your target market. Can you talk a little bit about specifically who your ideal client is within that target market?
Absolutely. And so for me, the folks that I'm looking for are, technology professionals who are working for a larger corporation, but who find that that's really not quite the right fit, right? They're not really cut out for a cubicle life, as I sometimes call it. And they feel like it's a place, while they get to work with technology, they're feeling like unfulfilled. They're not necessarily supported. A lot of IT professionals really, really turns out are not happy with their jobs because their employers often do not really do a lot of focus on development and on giving them feedback and that kind of a thing. And so what I found in working with some of these folks in my therapy practice is a lot of them have these ideas like in the back of their head. They're like, oh, I've got this kind of idea for business and I've never really done anything with it, but it'd be kind of cool, but I don't know. And, but as I talk to them more, it's really clear that one, it's a cool idea. And two, that that's what they're supposed to do. They are not the kind of person who's going to fit in the corporate box. And so it's those people that I really want to help, because I can relate to some of it. My time in different corporate jobs never quite worked for me, don't quite fit into that role. And so I understand how it was hard for me to get out of it, because I was kind of doing it on my own. And so those are really the folks who I want to connect with and really help get that idea refined and get a plan in place to get from where they're stuck to breaking free, where they can be out on their own and really do what they're supposed to do.
So with that in mind, what are, with your current target market, what are some of the most common pain points that you hear from them on a regular basis?
I think the biggest thing is just feeling really unfulfilled in their work and really feeling like there's not a clear path for them, right? Their employer doesn't help them in developing a career path or something that's meaningful for them. And so they feel a little bit stuck. Excuse me while I adjust this. And they don't really have a clear path of where they're going to go. And they feel just, again, unfulfilled. So they find themselves kind of like, what's the point of this? And I remember that. That's one of the things that actually drove me out of the technology industry. Was I was working at the time for a company that we would do small to medium businesses. We'd do installation and maintenance of their networks. And a lot of what we were selling, frankly, was technology for technology's sake. It wasn't really solving a problem. It wasn't really helping. And we weren't focused enough on helping the end users to really apply the technology. And so it just felt like this thing of, again, technology for technology's sake. It was very unfulfilling and very frustrating, frankly. And it's still a challenge in a lot of areas in the technology field.
Now, I work with a lot of therapists and private practice owners, and you come from that industry.
Right.
So what are some of the pain points that you noticed when you were in private practice that would be a common thread among private
therapists?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. One is this is like one of the worst things about education, as far as for therapists goes, is the just utter and complete lack of focus on the business aspect of things. I know with some programs that is starting to change, which I think is great, although I think it's still pretty minimal. But I can tell you, I can count the amount of information and education I got on business in my grad program on no hands, right? I mean, it's like there was nothing about it at all. And so that's a huge pain point, is like, how do I do this business thing? That's one. Another one is this. There is so much messaging within the mental health field about that. That's so much, I can say, a little bit fear-based. And I get that it's coming from a good place, trying to look out for it. And we want to make sure we protect the clients. We don't take advantage of them. We're not inappropriate. We don't abuse our psychological skills and knowledge. And if you take that too far, it can become almost anti-promotional, where it's like people are somehow supposed to just find you. If you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not promoting a solution that you're offering, how are people going to find you? And I think there's not a lot of support for that within within the therapy community. I think a lot of therapists really struggle with that. And I think a lot of therapists, personality-wise, marketing, or at least what's often traditionally thought of as marketing, like, hey, what can I do to get you into this car today? It's like that's not what they're like. Therapists, that's not who we by and large are. A lot more low key, kind of quiet, little, and so it's a thing where, like, what do we do with this? And I think that's part of why so many of them struggle.
Yeah, I agree with you. Boy, you just hit the nail on the head on so many factors, and very well spoken. And I love the fact that you've been able to take some of the basic principles that you used in psychotherapy and apply them to the work that you're doing now. So can you just kind of expand a little bit more on what you're doing to help IT professionals? Because I love the way you're mixing the two worlds together.
Absolutely. So sure. So it's there's kind of some basic straightforward things, but number one is this. And again, these things all apply. You're right. I mean, these are very much the same things that I would use, at least thematically, with therapy clients, as with coaching clients, and really they can apply in any number of areas. Number one starts with clarity, and it's really about really figuring out what matters to you, what is it that you want to do, what is it that you stand for, any of that, right? And when I worked with couples, I would do this with them and be like, what do you want your relationship to be? But with someone in business, it's like, okay, what are you trying to do? What's the difference you're trying to make in the world with this business? So that's one piece, that clarity piece, right? Then another one that's really, really important is getting a good, clear, detailed plan in place, right? And It needs to be often far more detailed than people think. That's one. And then two, people often have a really unrealistic idea of what the path looks like. We think like we get the plan and it's going to be like, it's going to go great. And it's like, no, what's going to happen is you're going to get this great detailed plan. And the first step you take, probably something's going to happen. And you've really got to learn to develop a good process by which you can kind of correct course, adjust, and keep going on the path, right? So it's getting that plan in place and really understanding the way the process works. And the other one that's, critically important at the end of the day is not so much confidence, which a lot of people look for, because confidence is a byproduct, I think. It is courage. And that's really comes down to is you've got to be willing to take risks. And that's scary, right? I mean, who here likes failure? Anyone? You never see, I ask people, no one ever raises their hand, because why would you like to fail? But part of it's because we label it wrong. We label it as failure, and that's not what it is. It's an attempt. It's a data gathering. We have to think like scientists, especially if we want to be considered, therapists. I tell you, you want to be considered scientists, act like one. So do an experiment, gather data, refine your approach, keep going. So that's a big piece, right, that I do with my clients too, is like say, so we get this good, clear idea of where you're trying to go. So that's kind of the why, would be to use Simon Sinek's language, right? He talks about, start with why. That's that piece. Get a good plan. Then we get going and we really learn how to take risks and to have courage. And sometimes that's by just breaking it down into smaller steps, which, by the way, ties nicely to that detailed plan, right? It's one thing to be like, build your professional network. It's another thing to say, okay, I'm going to reach out to one person today who I don't know but would like to get to know, and I'm going to reconnect with one person who I already know but haven't talked to in a while, right? You break it down into these smaller steps, and that makes it easier. So that's kind of the overview, I think, the main components that I'm using in the process with my clients.
I love that. So it's about doing what makes you happy, what you're meant to do, putting a plan together to make that happen, drawing out details behind the plan to manageable steps, and having the courage to put yourself out there and connect with people.
Pretty much. I want to make one minor tweak on what you said, and it's about the happy part, because I think it's actually important that we focus not so much on what will make us happy, but what will make us feel fulfilled, what gives us meaning. Happiness will be a good byproduct of that for sure. But it's like, because I thought like technology is fun, right? I like playing with technology. But because of the way I was doing it and the businesses I was working for that were doing it, it was ultimately unfulfilling. And so this is about getting tied to your values, what matters to you, right? What is it? And for me, so where this comes to, and it was true in my therapy work, it's true in my coaching work, it's one of the things I value very highly is identity. And the reason for that is because a core belief of mine is we all have something about us that's kind of not so much unique like in the special snowflake cliched kind of way, but there's a combination of traits we have where we're able to make a contribution to the world that's a little bit different, right? None of these things I'm talking to you about are like new ideas. I'm just putting my own kind of spin and twist on them. But there's a way about doing that. And there's a way in which that resonates with me that will speak to certain people. But if I don't put that out there, then how am I going to connect with it, right? And so identity is something I value real highly. And so when I'm doing work, whether again it was true in therapy, it's true in coaching, that's helping people take their identity and manifest that through how they live or how they work or how they build their business, that's really fulfilling to me. That's what it is. And then I come home from work being like, yeah, that's awesome, right? Because I feel like I'm doing something that matters. That's me. Everyone else, what matters to everyone else is different.
No, that's an excellent point. It really is. At the end of the day, you have to know that you are making a difference, and that's important. So fantastic. So I would love to know what kind of results are you seeing from your clients in your private practice now?
Well, it's cool. I mean, it's all, again, I've got the thing that's coming to mind mostly is I'm thinking mostly about this one client of mine who I've been working with for a while. He's just kind of in the launch phase of his business. And he's got, I can't get into a lot of the detail, unfortunately, but basically what it says, he's in a space, the thing he's told me, he says, the most valuable thing about our work together is you keep me focused. He's like, I kind of start to drift off course or I get overwhelmed and all this. And it's like my job, to keep him corralled and to also keep him from getting too lost in his own head when some of the self-doubt and some of the negative self-talk, right? So what I'm doing is I'm kind of like keeping him corralled and focused and all that. And so what happens is the same way that a laser is highly focused energy, that's true for a person. The more we focus our energy and stay concentrated, the better we get. And so what he's got, is he's hitting the ground running. He's just launching his business, and he's got this really cool system in place for his industry. And he's starting to demo it for people, and everyone he's talking to is like, "Whoa, this is so cool," you know. And he was like, "I don't know if this is a good idea for me to get this on place beforehand." And it's like now he's got people, basically he's gonna have people banging down his door as soon as he's really ready to get it launched. And it's about the focus thing. And so when I help people who have this clarity and know what they're doing to get focused, they're going to get more out of it. So they go faster, they go further.
Outstanding. So let me ask you this. If you could give only one piece of advice to our private practice owners out there who are watching this right now, what would that one piece of advice be?
I guess that would, yeah, it's such a hard thing to decide because there's so many different good ones. But I think piece of advice maybe is to stop thinking of business as a bad word. That might be something I would say, because I know for me it's something that's always like, ew, business, right? And here's what it comes down to. Business is about helping people solve problems. And what we're getting in exchange for that solution is money, because we're doing it that way. It's not that there can't be other, situations where people might do barter arrangements, though that's of course generally discouraged, if not right prohibited in therapy. But it comes down to this. This isn't about selling people stuff they don't need or doing all these other things. It's about helping people solve a problem that's a meaningful and important problem, right? And that's all business is. That's it. It's really that simple. But we make it this big story in our heads about it's, slimy and blah, blah, blah. No, it's just about helping people solve problems. And as therapists, we have a skill set and we have knowledge that is not common. We forget this because we're soaking in it all the time, but we know this stuff and it's so powerful. And it really, really, if we can show people how to leverage it, they can do great things with it and really get a lot out of life, right? It's very easy in the coaching realm. If I go to a client and I go, okay, well, if I help you have either, take your business that you've got and increase your revenue by 10% this year, that's very quantifiable. Whereas if I help somebody who feels stuck emotionally or is in a relationship that they don't know how to change and they either fix or get out of, it's hard to put a dollar amount on that. But at the same time, that is very meaningful and important, and it's still solving a problem, right? It's just not one that's quantified as much in dollars.
I'm busting out of my chair right now because you're singing my language. I hear this on a regular basis for private practice owners as well. And, so much of what they do comes from a good place in their heart. It comes from the need and the desire and the want to help somebody. And when you talk to them about, marketing or business building or anything else along those lines, they tend to get a little uncomfortable. So no, I'm here to help people. Well, you also have to pay the bills, but the other part of that was when you talk about what's quantifiable and what isn't, or at least readily quantifiable. Right. Talk to the person who you helped through anxiety. You couldn't put a price point on that. When you help somebody who has had phobias of any kind or another get through that and come out the other side, that's likely worth way more than you're charging them.
and this is so this kind of ties to the thinking of it as a business thing, right? With coaching, a lot of the thought is about, I don't charge for my time as a coach. I charge for the solution I'm providing you. I put together a package, right? What's the solution you're trying to get? Here's how I'm going to help you get it. And if this solution's worth X to you, well, I will charge you Y, which is a lesser amount. And if I can produce that result, it's a pretty easy deal. It's hard to quantify that, so we just go to charging for time. But I think that ends up really devaluing ourselves because we don't really see the solution we're providing. I think it also creates a certain degree of potential inflexibility, because I think as any therapist who's worked in the field long enough knows, 50-minute sessions in your office can be kind of limiting, and it's not the only way you can work effectively with people. By any means, and some therapists have figured this out. But at the end of the day, if I was going into private practice from scratch, I would probably really look at approaching it from a more radical way, where I'd say, I'm going to work with you for a set amount of time. Here's some of the ways in which we can do it. Here's what I'm going to charge for that. It's not going to be this charging by the hour piece, because again, our value is in the solution we are helping to create. That's one of the big mindset shifts, I think, between coaching and therapy, but I think it applies to therapy as well. It's just harder because the valuing piece is, of course, a little bit more subjective. But I know I've had multiple clients to me who have said at times, they wouldn't, I couldn't put a price tag on what this has, been worth to me. And I'm sure any therapist who's had any success, with clients who has heard that at some point. It's not uncommon. And so it's like, yeah, when we charge for an hour and act like we're this kind of like, well, this is okay, and we feel guilty about it, we're really getting in our own way, and we're getting, frankly, in the way of being able to be as much of service as we can be.
Absolutely, because I think that there's a level of confidence that's directly related to that. If you're kind of backing off and saying, well, I don't know if I should charge this much or this many sessions, and if you're not feeling that level of confidence in standing behind that and running it as a business, how can you anticipate that somebody who would want to sign on with you as a client would feel that same level of confidence?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I get that it can be challenging because some of the folks depending on who your market is as a therapist, sure, you're sometimes working with populations where their income or things may be somewhat limited. But I still think there's a lot of ways of approaching how we do therapy and all that to even work with that. I have a couple, for example, of coaching clients who I work with more on a personal than a business thing, where I have actually designed kind of a system of doing it where I'm able to still, I think, provide very effective support to them through more frequent, smaller touches, essentially, instead of having these 50-minute calls every week or every other week. And they're saying it's working great. They actually really appreciate it because it's actually helping them stay on course more. And so I'm really not spending a lot of time for it. So I was able to find a solution that was a win-win, where I was able to get what I felt was a reasonable fee, and they're able to afford some help from me and still get something out of it. So it's about flexibility and creativity.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it absolutely is. It's about combining the two. You've provided such great content here today. Can you tell our folks how they can get in touch with you, how they can reach you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So two easy ways. One, anyone's always welcome to send me an email. I promise I'll reply. And so my email address is steve@stevemccready.com. And that last name is spelled MCCREADY. And if you want to learn a little bit more about me and my business and whatever, the best place to go right now is probably search me on LinkedIn. And that'll be the best place you find me, mostly because I don't actually have a coaching site up at the moment. That's something that's a work in progress. I've just been, frankly, too busy. And it hasn't been a priority. It's a good problem to have. But if you go to, look me up, you'll find my old therapy site, which is, but not my coaching site. So track me down on LinkedIn or send me an email, whatever. Be more than happy to talk to anyone about any of this stuff, because I love talking business. The more that I've kind of studied and learned it and understood it, I think it's a very important thing. So I'm always happy to talk business with people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for talking with us today, Steve. We sure do appreciate it. And for anybody who wants to get a hold of Steve, you can look him up on LinkedIn, Steve McCready, MCCREADY. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge of business and therapy and private practice all rolled up into one. And we just know that great things are going to be coming your way in the next year. So thanks again for your time, Steve.
You're very welcome, Lisa. So happy to be of help.